Okay, hi, my name is Christopher Tafur, and I'm presenting why Australia became so isolated over these past few million years. So, Australia has had much history and love for the past 50 million years, and this country is a wonderful representation of how the earth can change and also how things can take time to get to where they're meant to be. For example, trees take hundreds of years just to even be able to be enjoyed with the shade and the nature and for it to be where it should be. So tectonic plates were the leaders when it came to the dynamic movement on the Earth, and these played a superior role when it came to shaping Australia and its geographical history. Just about 180 million years ago, Pangaea broke apart, which led to the domino effect of tectonic events, which eventually led to the separation of continents. The journey of Australia began as it began to drift away from its surrounding land masses, which include Antarctica, South America, Africa, and India. And you can see here on the picture how Australia is just sitting on this little corner and it's connected to India, Antarctica, Africa, and a bit of South America. So at one point it just started splitting right here and started moving to the right, which we'll talk about more in the next slide. So just as Pangaea was separating, the rifting process commenced along the West Antarctic region, and the land masses began to shape Australia and Antarctica as one. So they were joined and were meant to never be separated. The rifting process ended one more job. They stretched and thinned the Earth's crust, and as a result, created rift valleys and fractures that assisted in the separation of the continents. Over time, the bond and connection of Australia and Antarctica weakened as the rift widened, leading to the inevitable isolation of Australian landmasses. So this rifting process had more to it because it was the main influence of why Australia had all these beautiful and significant geographical features that are known today. And on this picture, you can see the little rifting process beginning, and probably after a few thousand years or 100 years, these two lands will just be completely separate from each other. So right after the separation of Gondwana, which is a region I'll show you in the next slide, Australia continued to drift towards the north by the influence of tectonic plates. Millions of years passed, and the tectonic plates of Australia picked up more land masses and took it to shape Australia, and this allowed it to grow. So it was almost like Pac-Man needing more tiny islands, which made it bigger. These movements gave Australia many geographical features, such as mountain ranges, volcanic activity, earthquakes, and even today, Australia has developed its very own tectonic plate, separate from those in Antarctica and the Pacific region. This can help you think how Australia still has so much movement left in it. So maybe in another million years, Australia will be next to the US. We'll never know. So here in the picture is my theory of how the land separated. So here on the right side, you can see the magma and volcanic area just shooting between two land masses or two tectonic plates, and it just pushes them away from each other. And we can assume that this continental crust could be Australia, and this over here could be Antarctica. And then over time, this just started pushing these two continents away from each other, which led to this whole tectonic plate being Australia's alone. So Australia is characterized as an isolated country because of its oceanic surroundings, which include the Pacific and Indian Ocean. The oceans gave Australia a natural barrier of water, which means that the species and the genetic diversity is only limited to Australia because it cannot exchange with other continents. The oscillation also opened doors for it to carry species that are only known in Australia and nowhere else. So here in the picture, you can see the Indian Ocean on the left and the South Pacific Ocean on the right. So you can see how it just isolated Australia is and just surrounding their tiny little islands that Australia just took as for its own. So the isolation has resulted in the creation of very unique climate patterns. And this consists of tropical rainforest in the northern region, temperate forest in the southern, and just deserts in the middle sector, which I'll show you more in the next slide. The isolation of the continent has given the chance of having distinct plant and animal species because of these climates, which is pretty cool if you look at it from the science perspective. So the ecosystem has given Australia species that are not found anywhere else in the world, even to this day, and it is unknown if any of these are invasive species. And what I mean by that is these species never interacted with any other, like outside of Australia. So we can't really know if the species will coexist or they'll just take over each other, or we don't know what problems could arise. No, no, wrong, too far. Okay, so here we can see on the bottom southern region, it's all nature, it's jungles, and you got little koalas. In the middle sector, you got like a deserty area with the kangaroo, camels, and then just above it, you get more not as tropical, but somewhat of a forest with waterfalls and mountains, just rivers. So you can see that Australia is a mix of all three of these regions. So Australia's million-year history has housed species that had a very unique evolution process, which can be found nowhere else on Earth. The isolation of land is to thank for this phenomenon because it has allowed for many years of independent evolution, which gave biodiversity in the animal sector and plant sector. What I mean by this is that it gave animals, plants to like adapt and grow in its own specific way. So now there's hundreds of species in Australia that aren't even found here in the US or South America or Asia or any of that. So many of the unique species are marsupials and manotrims and reptiles, which all experience a distinct evolution to adapt to its habitat and landscape. An example of this is the kangaroo's hopping motion, because the kangaroo had to adapt by hopping to outrun the predator that it had against it, because hopping doesn't really take up that much energy of the kangaroo. So really the kangaroo can be running for miles before it even gets tired and it breaks a sweat. So this was just like a small little adaptation that they picked up during their evolution. So in conclusion, Australia's million-year journey has given it the place we know today. With its very unique landscape, weather, and ecosystem, we can learn so much about where the Earth is heading and how much evolution is possible on this planet. The separation and movement of tectonic plates is to thank for this. So it's best if we try to preserve these kinds of lands and prevent environmental degradation, which basically means where the land just becomes useless from pollution, wars. So we just want to try to maintain that land if possible. So if we can just give the bare minimum to this planet, then who knows what kind of possibilities we could have and what kind of evolution we can experience. So thank you for listening, and here are my citations, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.